Hey guys, it's Lee Taylor. That's the 2021 brand new Ford Escape ST line, and this is the Right Lane Review. Ford has a knack for SUVs and even recently committing to an SUV you'd-only lineup in some markets. So it's no surprise they're rolling out a few new faces, and they're hoping to land a royal flush in the Aussie market. So the mid-size SUV segment is basically dealer's choice. There's plenty of options, the RAV4, the Tiguan, the CX-5, you name it out there, it's probably a decent car. So Ford's brought the Escape back in a brand new platform and added quite a few new touches. Same 2-liter grade engine, brand new platform. With this new platform, Ford's actually hoping to add on great new tech, including the option for a plug-in hybrid model here in Australia and potentially an all-electric model down the road. The tech also includes adaptive headlights, which now have an anti-glare function, great new safety features, and a beautiful new digital dash and heads-up display. So how's the Escape when you get out on the road? Well, not too bad. It's a typical mid-size SUV, so you sit up nice and high. You can see out of it just fine. When you're out on the open road like we are now, it does perfectly fine. The sport suspension, the ST line suspension, is a bit stiff. It's not too stiff though, but it's stiffer than, say, like a Tiguan of similar spec. You do get blind spot monitors in this particular ST line model. This car has an additional pack which gives you adaptive cruise control with a stop and go function, as well as a smart cruise function. So it will actually scan the speed limit signs and apply that speed limit to the cruise or the limiter, which is actually pretty cool and useful for the most part. Because of the heads-up display, you have plenty of information directly in front of you, tons of space because there's an Escape after all, and the seats are supportive enough. They're not my favorite, being a bit of a seat whore, but they're okay. I do really like everything in hand though. It feels really nice to drive. I mean, this car's got a 2-liter inline-4 turbo engine, the GT-DDI, which has been around for a bit, and it's got somewhere in the neighborhood of over 185 kilowatts and over 350 newton meters of torque, which is a lot of power in a midsize SUV of this segment if it's not German. And it's routed to the front wheels in this particular car, which is a bit of a problem because Ford hasn't really given it a tires or suspension that can handle all the torque, so it's a bit torque steery if you put your foot down. But if you go light and keep it in normal mode, you're fine. I recommend the all-wheel drive actually because it would I think it would probably get rid of some of this torque steer issue. But the good news is you can get out of the hole pretty quickly, and you have a bit of a sports car SUV feel, which I actually quite like. I like that sort of side of it. The car feels good in the hands, it's easy to place, it's great to drive. I just don't necessarily care for some of the interior bits, but that seems to be the Ford design at the moment. Dynamically, actually, with all that power, you get an SUV, like I said, that's a bit sportier in the hand. With the sport suspension, despite it being a bit stiff, it actually makes the car handle really well. And it has a bit of prowess, I would say. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's hard to make SUVs a sports car, but if you're gonna pick one, the Escape's probably up there as far as performance is concerned, mostly thankful to this lovely 2-liter. And the suspension tuning is quite nice. It feels agile on its feet, it's quick in the steering, it's quite accurate. I do wish it had better stickier tires that probably handle its torque a little bit better and the steering feel. You have 6 different modes with this car, and this is probably my biggest gripe, is you have a lot of modes for a front-wheel drive car. I reckon most of them are probably more useful in the all-wheel drive model, which is the model I would recommend anyway. And it just changes everything up. So you have normal, which is fairly normal, eco, which makes everything a bit more fuel conscious, sport, which makes the steering a bit heavy and fake, which is the part I don't like, as well as sharpening up the throttle and the gearing response in the 8-speed automatic, which is a decent automatic. Then you have slippery and deep snow and sand, which use the traction control system and the gearbox and whatnot, the stability control system, to make things a bit more stable when you end up in some weird adverse conditions. And then you have a trail mode, which is a bit pointless for this particular model of car, I think, because you're not really going to see the Escape out on the trail very often, at least not in ST line form. And so if you're out and you need to use it and you have the all-wheel drive model, I reckon it'll do just fine. But yeah, a bit odd for this particular segment of car. It's not really directed at being a off-roader, but I guess it could be a soft, gravelly roader, maybe. So what's life like on the inside of the Escape? Well, in the pilot seat, it's not too bad. I'm not a big fan of these seats being a seat whore, but the stitching and the pattern's really nice. And speaking of stitching and patterns, there's some actually really good trim in here, and these red stitching that you get on the steering wheel as well as the edges of the seats and leather bits is a nice touch. It makes the ST line kind of feel a bit elevated. The digital dash is beautiful, and you have a heads-up display sitting on top, even though the digital dash is a bit laggy at times. The rest of the interior, well thought out, plenty of cubby spaces, wireless charger, that sort of thing. You have this dial for changing gears, which I'm not a massive fan of for the sheer fact that other brands do it better. It just feels a bit loose in the hand. You can end up in park instead of reverse when you want reverse or neutral. It's just a bit weird. Sync 3 system's decent. The column, however, gets on my nerves because it's pointed away from the driver and it just feels a bit flat because of it. And this is a bit small for the segment. A little bit of a size clear. So how's life in the back of the Escape? Well, you actually have plenty of room. I mean, I have great knee room, plenty of headroom, and the seats are actually quite comfortable. They're even adjustable forward and back, as well as the backrest. You don't get a cup holder, unfortunately, and no armrest. That's a bit weird. But you do get a USB-C and a normal USB port for charging your devices. And the only thing I don't like back here, besides the lack of an armrest, is this door card. It's just a bit meh. So how is the boot on the Escape? Well, typical midsize SUV, you get tons of space. And it's actually got this kind of cool little load cover, so it actually attaches to the door instead of having to pull in and out on top. You have plenty of space for everything else, some cubbies on the side, a couple of 12-volt sockets, and the seats do fold down with some handles on each end. So you don't get a lot of room under the floor though, because you actually have a full-size spare. So what's my tops, bottoms, and final verdict on the 2021 Ford Escape ST line? Well, on the bottom are just a few annoying things that annoy me particularly. The fact that the interior scoot away from the driver and it's just a bit bland and flat. The infotainment screen is a bit small compared to some of its competitors, and the digital dash, despite being beautiful, is a bit laggy at times. Beyond that, I really like the drivetrain, but it just doesn't feel like it's quite calibrated right. So it'll spin up the front wheels pretty easily, and the transmission can be a bit confused at times. But leave it in sport and you'll be fine. So what's on top for the Escape? Well, I think it's probably the sports car of the segment. Its dynamics and engine really bring it to the top there. It's got plenty of space on the inside, quite practical, easy to use, easy to live with, and easy to service with all the cap price servicing that Ford does. Not to mention, then, I actually quite like this color and styling. So what's my final verdict on the 2021 Ford Escape ST line? Well, in a world where the midsize SUV market is pretty much dealer's choice and there's plenty of great queens, I reckon you're looking at a king for perky dynamics and a bit of fun. So if you want some pep in your step in your medium SUV, give it a look. Come on, coffee, kick in.